Welcome to the conversation about the underrepresented, gifted, and talented population. I am Sherry Johnson. It is my pleasure to serve as a guide along the journey. We will be addressing two objectives. First, we'll explore the characteristics of the traditionally underrepresented GT students. And next, we will examine factors that contribute to the perpetuation of underrepresentation in gifted programs. So, who are they? What are they like? Hopefully, you had a moment to look at the slides that address specifically the underrepresented GT students. If you did not, may I encourage you to pause this video and go and watch it. You will find out that there are four different groups: the minorities based on race and ethnicity, the economically disadvantaged, often referred to as EDs, the culturally and linguistically diverse students, the CLDs, and the twice exceptionals who both have a gift being identified and a disability that they have to contend with. So watch that video and get additional insights. So that is what the video will say about them. But what is it that these students have to say about themselves? In their own words, what are they like? Let us see. Or the underrepresented students were sitting in classrooms just waiting to be discovered. Where are they? The underrepresented, gifted, and talented students, they're in every state, they're in every school district, they're on every campus, they're in every race, ethnicity, income level, and ability groups. They're not limited to geographical locations. They're not limited to income level. There are students who are underrepresented in gifted programs, and they're simply waiting. They're waiting to be acknowledged. They're waiting to be identified, because if we're able to identify them, they will be included in gifted and talented programs that will challenge them, programs that will allow them to exercise your gifts and talents, programs that will better equip them to share their expertise with the world. These students are simply waiting on educators like us to make a difference in their lives. Why are they underrepresented? When I think about it, based on experiences, based on research, I know these gifted and talented students are simply hidden. Unfortunately, they're hidden in plain sight. When I watch the movie Good Will Hunting, it takes me back to the underachieving gifted and talented student. But let us take a moment to look deeply at this movie. I promise you, I will not give away the ending or anything like that. I just want us to think about the gifted and talented students that are in our midst, the individuals that are in our midst, and how they're hidden in plain sight.
Mod fx square dx. So please finish Percival by next time. I know many of you had this as undergraduates, but it won't hurt to brush up. Thank you, Stephen. I also put an advanced Fourier system on the main hallway chalkboard. And I'm hoping that one of you might prove it by the end of the semester. And the person to do so will not only be in my good graces, but also go on to fame and fortune by having their accomplishment recorded and their name printed in the auspicious MIT Tech. Former winners include Nobel laureates, Fields Medal winners, renowned astrophysicists, and lowly MIT professors. Well, that's all. If you have any questions, I'm sure that Tom has the answers.
Oh, I wish we're having this conversation face to face. There is so much that we could talk about. I know some of the high school math teachers, they might have been looking at the board and they've been seeing the math in the background. There may be some other teachers in at your home right now, in your room, wherever it is that you're watching this video. And you may have been having a little math anxiety just seeing all the mathematical formulas just written on the board. But let us put that to the side for a moment and let us go back and think about underachieving gifted learner. That janitor was just working. But I can tell you without giving away the ending of the movie that he's a gifted and talented student. He's just one that was not being served. So why are they underrepresented? There are policies and procedures that are in place to help us identify gifted students, but none of them are specifically directed to say if they're not identified, let us go through and let us find the traditionally underrepresented gifted students and let us use these particular procedures to help identify them. There's not a national standard asking us to do that. States, however, have developed their state standards and their plans that help us to identify gifted and talented students. And then we have school districts such as ours who are giving us the opportunity to have this conversation, to look closely at policies and procedures and professional practices that will help us. But as I think about professional practice, we can talk about the need for professional development. We can also talk about the need for professional development in addressing teachers' perception. Because one of the things that keep a lot of the traditionally underrepresented students out of gifted programs is a deficit orientation in which teachers are not seeing the potential that lies in the student. They're only focusing on the shortcomings that they perceive exist. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about the professional practice and how we can help overcome such disparity in referral processes. Another thing that causes underrepresentation are the learning pathways. There are times when gifted students are placed within clusters or within classrooms in which they're not challenged. So they're not properly suited. And even within that classroom setting, they may be socially there, but intellectually, they are 3, 4 years ahead of time. And if they're sitting in classrooms with their chronological peers, then they're not getting the intellectual stimulation needed unless your teachers are trained in gifted and talented practices that will help to make the difference. Parents are also not trained to be advocates for these students. And so, whereas you'll have parents from the middle class advocating for the needs of their students, the traditionally underrepresented gifted students tend not to have parents advocating for their needs to the same extent. But I want to point out that if you're looking for additional resources that will address why traditionally underrepresented students are hidden in plain sight, I invite you to read The Guide for White Women Who Teach Black Boys and What Is It About Me You Can't Teach? How will we address underrepresentation? It will take purposeful effort. One of the things that we're doing right now, the professional development, it does account because it helps us to be discussing the issues and coming up with ideas. There are policies and procedures that are being adjusted and being rewritten. And instead of looking at it at the national level, the state of Texas has even revised the state plan in 2019 to address specifically some of the concerns highlighting the traditionally underrepresented gifted learners. By going through training and talking about differentiation of the curriculum, we're going to be able to see teachers creating more learning pathways that are geared towards students. It's going to take purposeful effort to get parents involved and more involved in advocating for their students. So everything's around being purposeful in what we do. Some books that I have found helpful in giving me insights is Poor Students, Richer Teaching, Disrupting Poverty, and the Culturally and Linguistically Classroom, in which I talk about responsive teaching and learning strategies. So there are a lot of things going on. A part of that purposeful effort, we need to talk about and focus on our educational practices. There are some gaps in education that we can't ignore, and one of them is the achievement gap. But what exactly is the achievement gap? Let's explore for a moment. So when we talk about the achievement gap, we're looking at the difference in test scores between minority students, low-income students, and their white and Asian peers. It is pointed out that it starts before kindergarten. And so it's a credit to our school district when we are now having pre-K programs because it is helping to close the achievement gap. The emphasis is on grade to make sure that we achieve grade level mastery and to help struggling learners get caught up. By focusing on the achievement gaps, there are times when we are not focusing on the excellence gap. What exactly is the excellence gap? comes on to the excellence gap, we're talking about the advanced learners. We're talking about the difference between high achieving students, those who are poor, those who are rich, those who have money, those who don't. With the gap, they're not able to participate in rigorous coursework. There's maybe some gifted programs and services that are not close to their homes, and they're not able to participate in that. They're limited to things like global competition and, in the end, economic advancement. And it's not because they did not have the intellectual capabilities, it was because opportunities were denied, because they were not a part of the gifted program. So addressing the excellence gap means clustering students, teaching students based on their intellectual needs and not their chronological age. It's coming up with instructional strategies in which we are front-loading students. Take a high school class, for example. Gifted students are able to participate, and high achievers as well, but gifted students are able to participate in AP classes. But if they're missing some foundational skills, doesn't matter how great the high school teacher is, that teacher cannot teach all of middle school and all of the high school curriculum. So they're going to need some front loading from previous grades. So the high school teacher, he or she is looking to the middle school teacher to help with the front loading. But the middle school teacher cannot front load everything that the kid was supposed to learn in elementary school. So the middle school teachers are now looking to the elementary school teachers and like, hey, you need to help us with the front loading of information. And we know that even before the students entered school, there are some students who are at a disadvantage and have already having some gaps. So if they're having achievement gaps and learning gaps, then our pre-K teachers have to start helping with the front loading. So it is a community effort in order for us to enhance opportunities for our students. We need explicit communication in which we're talking to parents, inviting them out, having those gifted and talented meetings, and telling them explicitly about the benefits of enrolling their students and having their students participate in gifted services. There are times when we have to remove the obstacles. Like right now, we're able to reach out to a lot more parents using technology. It is something that we definitely want to continue going forward, regardless of the format school takes. And of course, professional development, to talk about looking at the whole child and not just looking through a middle class lens. Because gifted students in poverty will act differently based on the context, based on the situation, and based on the setting which they're in. So we cannot judge our gifted students in poverty with the same lens that we're judging our middle class students. There are some mannerisms such as language, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the economically disadvantaged gifted learners. So there are some things that we have to do differently because these students are different. And in doing things differently, we are learning strategies to help us become better at identifying and assessing these students. Thank you for joining me in this conversation about the underrepresented gifted population. I'm Sherry Johnson. You may reach me at sherry.johnson at CFISD or on Twitter at Teacher Sherry J. Remember, together we are growing minds and changing lives.